Yes, indeed, it's a challenging phenomena to try to imagine. I may give one example. The village that my father is coming from, it's somewhere a tiny village in Kilimanjaro. It's a place called Kilimanjaro. It's mountainous. Because of the mountainous nature, the land is not enough to cultivate. And because of inheritance system, even that land is divided into smaller pieces. So you have a land tenure problems. And for that reason, many people from my tribe are also lawyers because of land problems. So naturally, people love laws. But because of the low productivity of that area, because of the land and the weather is not very conducive, don't get enough rains, and frequent famine happens in that area. So many people opt to send their children to school. So school will become so one of our member of parliament then came and told people that, you know what, you guys here, there's no future in agriculture. So the only thing you can do is investing in brain. So people went to school. Now when you go to that village today in my country, you find nice houses, there's electricity almost in nearly every house, there's phone, all these facilities nearly, but there's no young people. You have only old people, grandchildren, and some houses are now locked because there's nobody to stay in. Everybody has moved to town. And there's now in that village, there's, I wouldn't say urban poor, but maybe now this would be a different phenomenon of a village poor. Because now you have, in my village, people buy everything. People buy food instead of cultivating their own food. Right? So now it brings another type of poverty. So young people have gone to town. And now we are thinking, how would we make the young people back in? So maybe we have to looking for another activity in that area. So this is one case where agriculture was not paying. But for those areas where agriculture is paying, what we are seeing, there's a new phenomena coming now in my country. You have people of my generation, some of them now either doing agriculture as a side activity, or some of them have quit jobs going to these areas. But they are going to farm in certain crops. You find a certain niche of crops that are high value. And they're going there investing with technology because they have enough money to go invest. So you find them in rice production. You find them in the fruits production. You find them in cashew nut production for export. So yes, if you be able to put policy right, prices right in certain products, you find a migration of people coming in. But of course, they're not going to farm. They're going to be farmers like investors, not to farm themselves. Right? So they hire people, they have managers, then they're trafficking between towns and the rural areas. But our National Vision 2025, now it's almost nearly end of completion. It was looking forward for Tanzania to become a low middle income country by 2025, whereby agricultural sector will shrink in terms of the number of people engaging into it, but the productivity will go higher. And then many people will be urban. So we're expecting all these young people not to go back to farm, but to go back to be busy in the value chain, in the warehousing, in the processing, in the crop aggregator, in the, let's say, somebody establishing a company with his few drones to help doing the pesticide spreading, things like that. We don't expect them to go back to farm. Right? So they go to town, you'll be having few people, but be able to produce enough. And to me, I think that's the best way to go. And that explains many development. If you look at Europe, I think in Germany, it's 80% of the population gets into agriculture, feeds the whole country. In US, it's 3% in agriculture, feeds the whole country. I was looking here, the people who engage in agriculture, it's like 2%, 2-3% in Korea, but produce all this rice, 90% of the rice. Of the needs of Korea is produced by 2% of people because they're using mechanization. So to me, I don't mind people moving out, but if they are migrating to town, it means they should give a room for rural, expansion of agriculture and mechanization. Because otherwise, now we have people in urban, jobless. And then in the rural areas, there's nobody to farm. So the country may suffer two crises: crisis of unemployment in the city and crisis of food production in the rural areas. At least for now, they are in the rural areas. Even if they are not producing enough to sell, as I gave you statistics, at least they produce enough to eat for themselves. So the government has less burden of making sure how they eat it, or how will they eat, how will they feed for themselves. At least you can get away with that. It helps you to avoid political crisis. Like one of the reasons in my country, Tanzania is one of that few African countries that have never experienced civil wars and bloody conflicts. But one of the reasons is because people have land and people can cultivate their own food. In a way, we might not have achieved much in terms of export and all these glamorous agricultural stories of a transition, but at least it maintains stability and peace in the country. The food inflation is manageable. Everybody can be able to eat. About nutrition, that's another thing. At least they can eat, whether it's very nutritious or not, that's a secondary, because stunting rates are also high. But at least we are sure of people feeding themselves, because feeding yourself I think is number one security challenge of any country. So at least now we're meeting that. Now, if we are not transforming rural area to make it more productive and more attractive to huge investment, to be able to produce food and unlocking employment, because some of these employments we're looking, I mean, in my country, like, which has a 7% of the population depending on agriculture. Even if whatever you do, still a lot of people will be employed in agriculture. There's no way all these people will get jobs in town. But what we are saying is they should not be employed in the hand-hold agriculture. We now want them in the value chain: transportation, warehousing, value addition, processing, and other activities, marketing, trading, retailing. That's the new agriculture to the young people in Tanzania in the next 10, 20 years. That's what we envisage. But few will remain in the field with their machinery, producing enough to feed everybody else. And some of others will get into the business value chain in between. I think that's much more, that's sustainable. That will make our country stable and peaceful and prosperous. Thanks. Wow, that's nice. I see the lady there.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. My question.
Where are you from, my sister?
I'm from Uganda.
Oh, next door.
Yeah.
Banange.
We've seen majorly the large-scale farmers who are a very small percentage. As you know, the nature of the countries is not really different. So I would like to ask the target people for the Agricultural Bank of Tanzania, and also whether they are doing value chain financing or just doing microcredit to smallholder farmers. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. My name is Jean. I'm from Rwanda. My question is, as you have said, 70% of population are engaged in agriculture, and farmers, they are still struggling with many challenges, as I have said, about like high productivity, processing issues, value chain. I was wondering on budget allocation on fiscal year, which criteria do they consider to allocate budgets based compared with other ministries? Because in agriculture sector, it has like high attention based on population engaged in that sector. Thank you.
Okay. At the back. Okay. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. My name is Kabembe Solomon Timba. I'm from Uganda. Mine is not a question, but I would like to extend thanks to you for your remarks. And then before that, I would like to thank our department, the KOICA office, through Professor Shin, for this great opportunity you have rendered to us to invite the Ambassador of Tanzania, His Excellency. I want to talk in the spirit of East African community because I may not get the chance of my ambassador coming because we don't have an embassy in Korea, we have a consulate. However, seeing His Excellency in front, I know I'm well represented. He noted on the challenges, actually the challenges of Tanzania are not far away different from those of Uganda. Even Uganda is an agricultural country, and we are really trying our best to make sure that we commercialize our agriculture sector through promoting various technologies in agriculture. He noted on the, I noted two serious points. Number one, not being able to maximize the market, Korean market. Yet all along I was wondering why we are able to export to European Union and why not Korea. Because I always get time to visit, to go and buy some products, especially food from Korean markets. And I find it hard to purchase the fruits especially. They are so expensive, and sometimes the quality is not so good. It is not comparable to the East African fruits. So I saw it as an opportunity for our excellence to really go into serious collaboration with institutions like KNU, especially the KNU KOICA SP office, because this is an agricultural department and they have experts. In my country, I've seen, by the way, I didn't tell you, but I work with the Ministry of Agriculture in Uganda, especially with the Human Resources Department. We've had projects, and we've had projects through KOICA. We've worked with the Yonsei University. And when I was admitted in KNU, I had a thought, if Yonsei can have projects, agricultural projects with our university, Makerere University, the leading university, to improve agriculture, especially in dairy sector, why not KNU? Why can't we have a KNU, especially our cultural department? Because they have the experts. I believe if there is good collaboration through you, because this is an open opportunity, you have opened an opportunity to the East African community. I know they can take up Tanzania, then next Uganda can be number 2. So I believe going forward with all these challenges we have, we can work hand in hand with institutions such as Kangwon National University to improve the status quo of our agriculture in our East African community. Especially you said, I believe I really concur with you that, agree with you that the ability is not to produce, but the market failure is the issue. Because especially in East Africa, we have the youngest population. They are energetic, we have the fertile land, but the technology is still a challenge. And in Korea, they have the best, I think, because they're producing on small plots, and it is almost the same situation in our country. So I believe in collaboration with the institutions like KNU, we can achieve a lot. We can improve agriculture in our country, thus rural transformation. Thank you very much for honoring this invitation.
All right, I think there's one here, and then I'll be able to answer, then I'll go for another round.
Okay.
I'll come to you later.
Thank you very
I'll
much.
take it out.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you very much, Professor Singh, for giving us this opportunity to witness this. My question is actually based specifically on education as a factor of rural development. Like Professor Shin said, for any rural development to move from underdeveloped status to developed status, one of the greatest factors is education, because even before you can invest in rural area, those farmers, like rural farmers, have to have the technical know-how. Maybe you want to teach them how to go about using their machineries and all those high tech. They have to have that awareness and have to have the technical know-how to handle those machineries. So I think education as one of the factors will really boost rural development. And also in terms of high productivity, you said something about in Tanzania they use a lot of land area for cultivation. However, the productivity is always low compared to that of Korea. So that also goes back to education. If you want to invest and those people you want to invest in don't even know what to do about the machineries, so they will not be able to increase the productivity. And like my colleague also said, in research and development, so if maybe the agricultural sector has a collaboration with the educational institution that can bring the innovation of research to the farmers, they will be able to know what to do and when to do what. So I also think that research and development is also a key factor to high productivity rate and what have you. Then my question now is about the policy model. Like in your country, what kind of policy model does your government implement in agricultural sector? That maybe like how do they go about implementation of policies that guide production and consumption of goods and services in the country? So does that really affect the agricultural sector? I mean the policy model. Thank you very much.
Wow. Where are you from, my friend?
Oh, sorry. I'm from Nigeria.
Nigeria, all right. Okay, quite loaded. Let me try to attempt answering. My colleague brother from Tanzania spoke about the challenge of low spending in research, which leads to lack of seed improvements. And I think his comments are somehow related to my Nigeria brother as well, in terms of the application of research. So it is not, I mean, assumption may be that maybe African governments do not value research. But experience, my simple experience working at least with that high level, the president's office, the challenge I've seen is the demands are huge, and the ability of the governments are very limited. So if you're expecting a government to allocate money for research, research is expensive, and it's not a cheaper thing. Even in Korea here, they're doing a lot of research, but it's expensive. But what I've seen here that I've not seen in our countries and we need to work on is, for research to work, you need somehow somebody to put money into it. So either the government or the private sector. I think what I'm learning from here in many advanced countries is the linkage between private sector and research institutions. So there's a business case for research. So once we have the corporations and private sector ready to buy, ready to invest to this research institute and ready to buy the products of that research and going to implement in the business case, that's when you find more money comes to the research. But when you're expecting a government coffers to put research, it's something okay, it's good for the country, but our country has a limitations. So I'll give you an example of my country. One time, I traveled with my president then to one university in Canada called Rutgers University. And when we were there, we discovered the budget of the research, budget for research that university uses, it was actually dealing with agriculture as well. It was much higher than amount of research their entire country spend on research. So you can just imagine, just one university. It's not even the only university. It's just one of the universities. The budget for research is higher than the money that the government is spending on research all over the country. And that one, as well, mind you, it's coming from the private sector, much of it. It's not even from the government, from the private sector. We're investing there to find solutions to go and make business. Now, in our countries, you have research institutes that are completely alienated, detached from the private sector. And that's why I say in our agricultural sector development program, what we have tried is now trying to bring in private sector in to come in. We're still struggling with that one. Just coming to this agriculture, and this to us is an experience. Way back in 1960s, our founding father, President Nyerere, tried. So we have these centers all over the country. At least for every crop. There's a center for cashew nuts, there's a center for cotton, there's a center for tobacco. We have this for maize, for everything. But because of the socialism model then, we did not have a private sector in it. So assumption was the government will put money into those research. So when the ability of government to put money in that research, when the government was unable to put money into that, due to the crisis of the 1960s and 70s of the economy all over the world, then those institutions nearly collapsed, right? And it stopped attracting young researchers getting in. So I remember when I was working with, as assistant to the president, we went through these research institutes because at the time that we were trying to implement this new program, SDP. One of the challenges we found researchers in those centers, first of all, were already old, and they were actually either retired or closer to retirement. Because no investment, so young researchers could not join in. So there was a gap between the young researchers and the old researchers. So you don't have young researchers because it's not paying. So only the old ones are there, and they are in exit. So he had to make a decision as a president to extend their time in government. He said, you know what? No retirement for researchers. They should work until the day they start mixing things. That's when you say, okay, now you go and take care of your grandchildren. So he had to extend for them. But what's second thing that he did was we realized that these people had ideas. They already worked in these fields for so long, so they know the culture of the people, they know the geography, they know the soil. It's not that they lack expertise. Some of them, they are trained in most of these well-to-do countries. But the only thing, there was no incentive for them to do more. Why? Because first, government is not sending enough money to them. And second, when they have their outcome of the research, they cannot scale up. So the improved seats were there. But now there's you need somebody else to take that from the institution to the farm, to the market. It's another bold game. And this is not necessarily science. This is now marketing. This is now business. So this is what we are lacking in many of our countries. Sometimes we are looking at agriculture as independent and separated kind of economic activity. But in agriculture, there's also business side of it. And sometimes that's why I said in my presentation that we need skills in this intermediary. Sometimes we spend so much time to researchers, put a lot of researchers, we think that can produce magic, we put their studies on extension services. Fine, that's the one thing, but you need somebody who's purely doing marketing. You need somebody who's purely on financing. You need somebody who's purely that. So that's what we are lacking. So we tried in our case. So the president said we'll put 1% of our GDP to research. We couldn't. The policy statement was made, but whenever there's a collection, there's a lot of issues to deal with. So you allocate money for research, and if there's anything failure or any crisis anywhere, they're looking for the easy budget line to take money from. So take from the research. So they take it from the research, it goes somewhere. So we end up, instead of having 1% of the GDP, we end up having 1% of the budget. of the year. But that one produced a lot of changes in the past 10 years. In many of these institutions, they now started doing activities again. They're starting multiplying some of these of seeds. But of course, the challenge has been, where do you going to replicate? Because you may produce a seed, but seed needs multiplication. So you need farms to go and use for this. And these farms, again, we're talking about 70% of the farms, 2.5 acre average. So small. So how are you going to do that? So you need large farms to be able to test with. So if you have a private sector, large scale farming is easy to replicate this kind of research. So we have such kind of challenges. And I went to Brazil once as well with the president, and then I learned something new. We went to an institute that is doing research for cassava. It's only one crop. That institution does research for only one crop. They had 800 PhDs. Cassava. 800 PhDs. One institution. So you can imagine. I mean, how many does Uganda have? Does Rwanda have? So this is a serious business. We need to invest. But as I said, to me, I think the answer lies in trying to bring the market into research, trying to bring the private sector into research, expecting the government alone to spend on research. I think we have tried, and I think it doesn't succeed. Professor Shin here will help us. I think it's not cheap. I don't know the budget of this institutional research, but it's not cheap. It's a hell of the money. So we need to do that. My friend from Nepal asked about if we think good leadership and good politics are the mix in the success of agriculture. I'll say yes. It's very true. And again, I said education is everything. I mean, agriculture is everything. Agriculture is politics. Agriculture is business. Agriculture is science. Agriculture is financing, is everything. So yes, it's true. You need to have a leadership that is conscious on agriculture, because decisions you are making on the other aspects of the economy may hamper agriculture. It may be on taxation issues. How do you put incentives? It determines whether people should go to invest in agriculture or should invest in something else. We have been struggling in our political system, for instance, with my colleague may testify, taxation of farm products. Yeah? We have a central government and we have a local government. All right? So even if the central government is trying to relax, but you have a local government that depending on this taxation. So they put a lot of taxation to the farmers. It reached a point that just taking your few bags of maize from one place to the market becomes a way problem. So you need leadership. You need leadership that understands agriculture, that can see the connection between agriculture and other things, but again, that can communicate to farmers. In all the countries where agricultural revolution has taken place, there was an element of leadership, and this includes the element of, human beings need to be energized. Somebody must electrify them. Somebody might give them a meaning for them to engage into this agriculture. Somebody must invest into the hopes. So as I said, in our countries, 1960s, we did that with Ujamaa, visualization. We had a founding leader who was much more interested in socialism, believed in it. It was actually a religion to him. He preached to the farmers. Farmers organized into this socialized visualization, which we call them Ujamaa. The production went up. They did not fail on the production. They were actually, it was the same as among the project, where they were working together, building schools, building wells, working together to the farm. So everybody has its own farm, and then they have a collective farm. Everybody will go there and work. The problem was not on the production. So we achieved production in 1960s. We were food sufficient. The challenge was we did not think of the marketing. Assumption was the state will do the marketing. So when the state marketing did not go right, farmers did lose the incentive. Everybody abandoned this collective farm. Everybody going to farm from he or her own. So leadership, it's very important. We need that. And probably we need to, and not necessarily at the level of political, but at the level of the technical level as well, I think we need to have leadership in that area. Maybe my colleagues here, my African colleagues here may agree with me. In most of our ministries, especially Ministry of Agriculture, they are dominant scientists, experts, researchers. The line of them, if you find somebody with a different profession, is administration, if you maybe somebody in administration, and maybe economist. But you lack sociologists into them, you lack anthropologists into them, you lack people with management. So I think we should also not take agriculture as science and agriculture. We need, even at the level of the technical level, we need people who are beyond numbers, who are beyond science, people who can provide that leadership, people who can inspire. Because a farmer is, I don't know, anyway, probably it's not a good example, but a farmer needs an inspiration as well. He needs somebody to give them meaning. He needs somebody to connect with them. So this is what we are lacking. This is what happens in this Samungdo model. Something that inspires people to come together, to work harder, to share, to push together. And that to me, so I agree. Leadership it's very important. My sister from Uganda asked about the Agriculture Bank. Ours is actually very new. We started in 2015 as well. And we try to cater for both large scale and small scale. But we in this bank, this time, we avoided to go for a microcredit. It is targeted most in the value chain. So they fund projects that add to a certain value chain in it. Or even if it's a large scale, it has to be linked with the outgrowers. So you have to show that your production will help small farmers to sell into you or to impact them with technology. And also your production will add, maybe you're investing in the processing, you're investing in the warehousing. So investing in those areas that will unlock. So this is much more of a development finance rather than a bank, as a commercial bank that is aiming to getting an interest. Because we realized after trying so much with these commercial banks, they'll never lend money to the farmers. Because they're looking for the profits margin, simple. They want to revolve the money and get the profit. But agriculture is the long term, it has a risk and everything. So you need more of a developing finance, somebody who has an interest beyond profit. So this is used as a catalyst to unlock those areas. So far the model works. The challenge has been capitalization of this bank. That has been a challenge. That's what we're still struggling with. At least recently we got some money from the Tanzania AFDB, and then another money from the France Development Bank. So probably we may be able now to expand the scale. But so far the projects are going so well. My sister from Rwanda was asking about how do we allocate budget. In my country, the top ministry that gets a lot of money is agriculture, education, health. Now there are two factors coming with it. If you're just looking at priority, then you can say these are priority because big chunk of money goes to them, right? But big chunk of money of a penny is a penny. Since our budget is already small, even if you give it 30%, 40%, 30% of a small pie is a small pie. So that's a challenge number one. That much as we're giving a lot of money, it's not enough because our economy is already small. The answer is always, the way I look at it, is to find ways to increase investment of a private sector. And that it means having the right mix of policies to make them get in. But there's another mistake I think economists are making as well when looking at this budget. Sometimes we like to look at the agriculture budget independent of others. So you look at the money allocated to the slot called Ministry of Agriculture. But if you're looking at the concept of the rural development, you see more. For instance, in our Ministry of Transport, we have done a lot and put a lot of money for the rural roads. That is an input to agriculture because it helps to provide a link between production and the market. If you look at the budget of the Ministry of Energy, We have done a lot with the program, our rural electrification program, sending electricity to the villages, where now you can start having small processing, small preservation and things like that. But usually we don't count that one. We count that as the Minister of Energy, So collectively, the money you put on the Minister of Health in the rural areas, Minister of Education, if you look at it, you may see that agriculture is getting a lot of money. But tendency usually is looking at agriculture as a separate. So I think to me is agriculture budget should not be looked at its own. It should be looked at also with other activity, because without these, even if you put all the money in agriculture, you won't deliver if you don't have roads, you don't have rural edification, you don't have education, you don't have health and everything. But the another part of it is we need to be honest and fair. We also have a problem of inefficiencies in our Ministry of Education, a Ministry of Agriculture. We have that problem as well that we need to address. That yes, we are spending big chunk of money to agriculture, or sometimes we are sending small. But how best that small is also used? Do we really get the value out of that small we are putting? I think that's another big problem. And in many African countries, we have a challenge of mismanagement of funds, especially when it comes to things like subsidies, distribution of fertilizers. So there's also some loopholes that I think we need to plug. So there's a question of also, and sometimes it's not only corruption and appropriation, it's just simply about management of agriculture as a sector, which these are things to me we can learn from Korea. How can we put systems that can become more efficiency so that the small amount of money we are sending can be effectively utilized, right? For instance, do we have enough data? Do we have good data? Do we have a big data that can be able to tell exactly how many farms do we have? Of course, I gave you figures, 5.8 million farms. At least it's approximately 5 million. But can we be able to tell that we have XYZ farms, which demands XYZ fertilizers, XYZ seeds, so that you can allocate the right amount of money to the right amount of. So most of the times you find when you allocate the money, you allocate flat. In my country, we have 30 regions, so you have 10 billions, distribute to 30 regions. Maybe certain regions need more than others. Or by investing 20% or 80% to 20 regions, you can be able to get 80% return out of it. So I think we have that challenge. We haven't yet perfect our systems to make sure that we efficiently invest and manage resources for agriculture. So you may find in many of these countries, agriculture, it will be in top 3 of the budget. A lot of money will be going there, but sometimes you can't relate the money that we pump in and the impact and productivity that comes out. You pay a lot of money for extension services, but extension officers are in the office doing a lot of workshops and not going to the farmers. So things like those we need to check. Access to Korea market, totally agree. I mean, this is something we need to work on. I mean, I don't believe, I cannot take that Korean market can be that difficult to enter. If we can enter other markets, I think we can enter Korean market. It's just we need to work on the model of helping these African countries to meet the demands. And in some cases, it's not that they are not meeting that demand. It's only that they don't understand how the Korean system works. Like in my country right now, we are selling avocados. They call nowadays yellow gold. There's a lot of avocados now we are sending to Europe. And actually these avocados started being planted 10 years ago. After EU came with, European Union came with standards. Like if you want to sell avocado to our country, it has to be of this size, of this nature, it has to follow ABC, it should package this way, it should use pesticide to this kind of whatever. Farmers responded to it, now they're selling to EU. Sometimes it's about codification only. You just need to say like, okay, if you're already doing to the EU, now to do it in Korea, you just only to adjust A, B, C, D, and then you get certification, then you can sell to Korea. So it is easy to adjust what you already have. So sometimes it's not about not having capacity, it's about not knowing how to get into the Korean system, because the EU system, Korea system may be different. And I think this is something Korea can do, and this is what I was advocating as Aid for Trade. Maybe now we start going that way. And so that we can also sell to Korea. In terms of collaboration between universities in Korea and in our countries, East Africa, I totally agree with you. And I think this is something in the hands of Professor Shin can do that, right? And one thing I've learned across my career, exposure matters a lot. Certain things you cannot simply tell people. I mean, we can read. I mean, we go to the internet nowadays, we read what has made Brazil successful, Korea successful, this successful in agriculture, but seeing is believing. Exchange programs really works. These kind of programs, having these people in the room, in whatever way, they won't go back to their country and governments the same they were. Seeing is believing. So I think more of this exchange are very, very important for them to come in. Sometimes they have the basics, because at the end of the day, in the university, they read the same books, same literatures, right? So the theory is there, but you need to be there to see. Sometimes when you talk about agriculture, people think is, when I was coming yesterday, I was telling my colleagues, because I drove with the car, I was seeing these greenhouses. They are not so fancy, some of them. But in my country, people believe if it's a greenhouse, it has to be it's a complicated technology, something like coming from there. But I saw some of them here. It's just very, very simple. And I was like, can't you even do this? But seeing is believing. Here in Korea, it has been simplified. In such a way, I see much they're using just normal materials which are available in Korea. So it doesn't have to look very fancy, and it's not about the look, it's about what is inside there. What is it, what kind of input, what is so these kind of innovations can really make a difference, but they need to see. You need to see to make sense, because even before I came here, I thought greenhouse is complicated. But yesterday, looking at on the road, I was like, okay, I think there's something we can do. I mean, this is not so much as we think. So exchange are very important, and Professor Shin, I encourage you to do more of this. I believe it's in your power. You can talk to KOICA for that. My colleague from Nigeria, my brother, talk about the policy model. It's complicated, I would say, and we are still struggling to find the right mix of policies. As I said before, like in my countries, we have layers. You have a central government and you have a local government. Okay, and then you have ministries, right? Now navigating the policy space has not been so easy. In such a way, and it depends also with the country. Our country is almost 1 million square kilometers, so it's large. I mean, it's so spread. So you may find the policy coming from the center, once it reaches in the periphery, practice is totally different from the center. So we have those kind of the challenges, and we are yet to find an answer to that. But as well, you sometimes have I remember we struggle with irrigation. Where do we put Ministry of Water? So you have a Minister of Agriculture who wants to do irrigation, but irrigation is in the Ministry of Water. And how do you make these two ministries speak? So that has also become a problem. So somebody is planning irrigation, but somebody is controlling the water and the rivers. And they may have a different agenda. And there was a time this Minister of Water was in Ministry of Energy, Minerals and Water. So the minister of this ministry will certainly deal much more with minerals and energy, because it has a quick return, has a political stand. It's easy to be seen we're doing something than in irrigation. So you may find irrigation is suffering, water is suffering. right? So then at a certain point in time, they took it and put it in agriculture, all right? So we tried as well. But also management becomes an issue. So we need to see how we navigate. It's not easy. What I know, we are trying, and we are learning, and we are improving as it goes. But basing on what my brother from the past said, it needs leadership. And to make it in agriculture, you need leadership and you need whole government approach. So it's not about the policy in the Ministry of Agriculture, but how many other policies of other ministries link with that policy in the Ministry of Agriculture. Otherwise, you'll be pushing for things and things will never happen. And then one thing as well, somebody told me, one leader told me, so the challenge with agriculture, especially peasantry agriculture, is there are so many, so diverse, so they don't usually have a unity. Unlike transporters and other sectors. So they're not good in negotiating putting enough pressure to the government to respond to them. Because these governments are depending on votes to survive. So the mining sector is easy for them to organize themselves, small miners, and make a push. But throughout history of Africa, even before colonialism, peasants, they don't unite enough to make an impact. So sometimes they fail to negotiate better. But when you come into these countries like Korea, look at the US and UK and other places, you find farmers are a strong voice because they are not peasants. They're usually a little bit sizable. So they have economic muscles. So they are becoming a pressure group. They can sit down, they can say, our government's no way, we cannot take this, we cannot take that, we want this, we want that. They can put a demand and the government may fear to lose a voting bloc. But in many of our countries, they don't have economic muscles, they are fragmented, not united, so they cannot negotiate much their way. So policies sometimes may not accommodate their needs. You can get away with it. So I don't know how do we do that. And you may see, like in my country, those few who engage may see maybe the horticulture. They are much more organized, well-to-do farmers. They can engage lawyers, they can engage consultants, they can advise government policies, and they can influence taxation and everything. So you may find those kind of sectors are doing relatively better. But when it comes to these 70%, everybody has 1 acre, 2 acres, just produce for their own feed. So in a way, yes, we may expect governments to do much, but I think it also takes farmers to come together, to put pressure as well, to put the demands to the government for policy to respond to them. So we need that. Of course, we have cooperatives in my country. We are trying, and you have certain in certain kind of products where cooperatives are stronger than coffee, like coffee, cashew nuts, cotton, tobacco. They are doing better off than those who are producing maize, cereals. You may find they have their own coffee board. There's a coffee board, there's a cashew nut board. So they negotiate with the governments. They do research of themselves. They find the right papers. They get consultants. They lobby. So you might find they're doing relatively better than those who are doing only. And one phenomenon, I don't know, Professor may help us, but experience from my country. In those areas, we used to distinguish between cash crops and food crops. Okay? Cash crops are the ones for sale, tobacco, cashew nut, cotton. And then food crops, maize. Mainly maize and probably rice. Those who are farming cash crops or a mix of cash crops and food crops are doing relatively better than those who are producing the only food crops. I observed that phenomenon in my country. But also when you travel within a country, when you reach a place and you find there's signs of poverty, mud houses, and lack of economic activities, most of the time those places people are just producing food crops. When you go to places where people produce food crops and cash and they call it cash crops, you find different. You find the solar power, houses built by blocks, economic activities are going on in centers. It's much more alive. I don't know how to explain it, but I think somehow when you rely much more on producing cereals or products of less value, then chances are you become also poor. So maybe we need to find a way also to introduce to these farmers some sort of a mix of either cash crop and food crop, or making the food crop a cash crop. And of course now with the growing urbanization, the so-called food crop is now also a cash crop. So it's a question of how do they add value into that crop of theirs, how to increase productivity. So we need to do something to make, because the maize used to be a food crop, but nowadays in the neighboring countries, Uganda, Kenya, whatever, they're relying on the maize from Tanzania, and it becomes more of a cash crop as well. So we need, I don't know this dichotomy, how do we go about it? I'm not an expert, but maybe you may discuss in one of your classes to come. Thank you. There was a last one there.
Thank you so much for your nice presentation. I'm E드리스 from Nepal. I think my questions may be similar for us. My question is like, maybe in other country also, like Nepal, if you go to anywhere, just we ask what's your name, something like we make documents. We already, what's your occupations? We said farmer. So there is like quotations, by birth we are farmer, but actually we are not farmer. So I want to say that if you watch on the history of the allocation of the budget, like 20 years ago or 50 years ago, if you add the total budget in the end one hand, and in the other hand, if you saw the development of the agriculture, we will be find the result. Nothing. There is nothing result. So there is one question, and after that, I have been working in the Nepal government of Nepal up to 10 years, maybe this year. So there is 3 levels of the government in Nepal: central level, provincial level, and local level. I have been working in the 3 levels: central level also, provincial level also, and right now I am the local level of the government right now. So I want to relate that. You also, in your presentations, you told that in the agriculture sectors, most of the people are involved in agriculture sectors. Like in Nepal, 80%, 75%, other country like this. And in Korea, not too much, like 2% or 3%. So there is, that 80% is not interest, that is compulsion.
That is?
Compulsion, I mean, it is forced by, that not interested. This the 80% involved, that is only compulsion. And this 2% is the interested people who are actually farmer and they are going to farming. So I want to ask you, you are just near about Korea, you know the history of the Korea before 20 years ago, 50 years ago, and right now. You know the how was Korea started, and you know the today situation of the Korea. So we all are, this is the, thank you so much for the Professor Savarsin for providing this international platform. And we are going to be economists in our country when we come back. So when we come back, our government will ask that whatever we study here, it doesn't matter, but we find the result. We find how we can get any result. just we talking about many policy. We have also different types of policy, agriculture, skillful persons, many big university, but we are not giving the proper result of any agriculture sectors. So people are just, people just want to avoid these occupations, not want to do these occupations. So how can we give the better result when we come back? How can give the better result if we come back in my country?
Wow. Wow. Let me start with the last one. I think this is a challenge to you. Oh. Okay, sorry. There's another hand then. Wow.
Ambassador, I'm Rosario Luisi from the Philippines. I heard earlier that you said that the more educated the people, they go off the farm. So I agree with that statement, because in my experience also in the Philippines, I came from a province in the Philippines, a remote area also, that farmers send their children to school because they are believing that education can lift poverty. And in the end, those children graduated, are working in the city. They did not go back to the farm. Now, we have similar experience, Tanzania and the Philippines. Now, my concern is those people living left on the rural areas, the farmers in general. So, given the low productivity situation, so how is the income level of farmers as compared to income levels of non-farming sector? For example, services. And then, what are the programs implemented or plan to implement that elevate the income levels of farmers in order to attract young generations to do farming? Thank you.
All right. I think these are last two. Let me start with my brother from Nepal. How best can you go impact when you go back home? One of the greatest challenge when you get back home after the exposure that you have got here will be to either change the people around you or you being changed back to what you used to know before you came here. You go back home differently. You have seen the other side of the story. You have this knowledge and enthusiasm, but passion is not enough. Passion is not enough. When you go back home, for you to be able to effect change, you have to have a critical mass of people ready for a change. Even in your workplace, you can't do it alone. Most of the time people fail when they go back home and they think, now I have a silver bullet, I'm going to change everybody back home. Then you end up being changed yourself. You find there are so many than you, and therefore they resist you. Their resistance becomes bigger than you, and you become a problem. They say, you know what, he came back here, has become brainwashed, now he's a problem. So they find you somewhere, they relocate you to a certain place, certain research institute that doesn't have research, and they lock you there to frustrate you. So what is the best way to do? I think the best way to do is to learn how to influence. And influence takes time. One way is to write your experience, to document your experience. That's one way. The other way is to start winning the change makers. In a society, in an office place, not everybody, you don't need to win everybody at a go. Sometimes you just need to start, we need to start somewhere. For those who are Christians, Jesus had only 12 disciples. And he did not recruit them all at once. He recruited one after another until they become 12. And with those 12, he made Christianity the world religion that we celebrate today. Same as with the change. In an institution, to effect change has nothing to do much with the knowledge you have. It is much to do with how do you know to blend relationships, how do you know how to win people, and how smart are you to know when to introduce change. My experience in government, people become more easy to accept changes in crisis rather than in normal circumstances. Governments love stability. If things are going on okay, people don't want to disturb them. Unless something happens, that's when they look for another idea, for a new paradigm. That's the time you should strike. But if you just landed the day one and you start trying to changing things, you are likely to get resistance. And they say, look at him, he just coming of Korea, now he thinks he knows everything, he wants to, So get back to the organization. You can't change something you don't understand very well. Take some time to learn your system. Once you get back, of course, the time that you'll be here, I think, is 1 or 2 years. When you go back home, things will already been changed. I mean, you become a new little bit in the system. Get in, learn the system slowly, because every system has a place, has a socket, on which once you manage to find that socket, you can be able to change the entire current system. So my advice is go back home. You either go and write, or you may look for opportunity to go to a research institution, or take your time, learn the structure, get to know who's the change maker, because always in any organization there are some change agents. Win them first, make them understand, find the right person who make that policy, influence that person first, and then the rest will follow. And sometimes it's about letting them know what you know, but in a way that is humble enough, that does not make them sound they don't know. Yeah. When you go back and say, like, you know what, I came to Korea, they do this X, Y, and Z, it's like, this boy now thinks he knows so much. So the best way is to just find those people who can make decisions. There may be only 2 people in that organization. Offer your expertise, just share with them ideas in a story way, in a way that is not intimidating, just offering a solution. Sometimes just asking for a brainstorming, or going there like asking questions. You don't have to tell them this is how. Sometimes you talk to them in a way that you're asking question more, but you make, or you're presenting your facts like you are wondering. It's like, I'm wondering, I'm not so sure about this, but I was thinking of this. What do you think about it? It's like you're asking an opinion. Write your papers. So once these people understands you, it's like, I think that To골ani has some insights. Then they'll give you in a position to start implementing your ideas. That's when you can change, right? And that's why I said in agriculture, and to change agriculture, we need leadership. It's not about knowing. You can go back with your fine degree from KNU, a lot of knowledge, and you find people with a lot of experience of the organization politics and beat you out. So you being agricultural experts, you also need to know politics. Organization politics is very important, because these are eventually the ones which influence and change policy. Policy making, unfortunately, is a political activity. Whether it is policy making on agriculture, policy making in health, or policy making in water, it's political activity. You know how to navigate interests of various sections and departments, egos of the people, to put your knowledge and your agenda on the table. So to me, that's my advice. But yes, you can bring change to your country. It starts with an individual. The only thing is learn the how. So far, here you get the knowledge and exposure that are necessary for a change, but these are not enough to bring change in your country. You need to go now to learn the how to navigate the politics, how to navigate the ego of the people, how to know the right timing of introducing things, when to introduce and how to introduce. These are the ones which we decide your success into that. I think I've answered yours. Yes. On my brother from the Philippines, he shared about the income disparities between the people who engage in the farm and those who engage in the service sector, right? Yes, as in many of our countries, and I'm sure the Philippines as well, agriculture is not much paying compared to other activities. But it's something we can change, because in other countries, farmers are not poor people. So it's possible for a farmer not, actually in normal circumstances, a farmer not supposed to be a poor people. And they're supposed to be a well-to-do person, because they are in the business that is guaranteed. Every time people will need food all the time. The market is always there. So it's a question of how, to me, is how you put incentives so that farm activity pays more and people goes to the farm activity. What kind of policies that you're employing to that? Not easy as well, but that's what we are struggling in many of our countries. In my country is in this ASDP 2, as I said, is trying to make agriculture attractive. That's the only thing you can do, making attractive, giving a lot of tax incentives, sometimes supplying information. It's very important. Sometimes it's only about data. That guys, there's an opportunity here. If you're going to invest into X, Y, and Z, you can sell X, Y, and Z. People will leave the service industry and come to invest in agriculture. And sometimes they don't have to leave it. They can do both. In our country, there's a culture. Almost everybody has a farm. Even myself, I have a farm. But it's not an active farm. It's just a tradition that you have to own one. So I have a farm, but I'm at work. Sometimes I'm spending my money in the farm. When I'm getting frustrated, I stop it for another 1-2 years. I get interested again. I get a new idea. I go back to the farm, trying again. So it's a question of how do you leverage resources from individuals to the farms. And many people can invest in a farm, only that there's no incentive enough. Because people in town will own a restaurant, will establish a restaurant, will put money into a mortgage to buy a flat, will buy bonds, treasury bills and shares, but they could invest this money to the farmland, only that they consider it risky. So the only way is for government try to mitigate risk in the agricultural sector so that people will choose to invest their money on agriculture instead of putting the money on other things. Otherwise, there is no silver, at least I'm not an expert in this area, but this is my observation. I don't think there's a silver bullet to achieve that. Every country is struggling to make agriculture paying off and inviting. No wonder when you go to countries like European Union, they give a lot of subsidies. The government the agriculture in Europe is not efficient, actually. Sugar production in Europe is not efficient. The amount of money they use in production as an input, it's higher than what they get out of the output. But the government, because they want some sort of a food security and ensure labor to those people, government is putting money to subsidize prices so that the farmer in UK can compete with the farmer in Tanzania. So there's no silver bullet. It's not that a farmer in UK sometimes is more productive. It's not. Sometimes it's subsidized so that he can continue farming. Because otherwise, if he's not farming, he may go back to town, unemployed, there will be a political unrest, an MP will lose votes, so they subsidize. And sometimes you need to ensure food security. So at least a certain amount of produce should come from your own country, just in case. There can happen. There can be an unfortunate day. You can't import. You probably get into war. You need at least something to start with. So we need to maintain this agriculture. And so government must give different incentives. For those which can make subsidies, they do subsidies. For those who can leverage private sector, they bring in. But like any other sector, mining and everything, incentives matters. So it's a question of how government structure incentives to make agriculture paying, to make agriculture attractive, so that many people will go there. Otherwise, you always have a phenomenon of people going to the urban. Now, when you're a poor country, that is a challenge. As I said, we have contending demands, many demands, and very limited resources. So how do you play with that? Everybody is making a noise. Teachers want more salary. Doctors want more salaries. Farmers want more incentives. Everybody wants something, and you have little to give. And that's where the role of aid comes in. That at a certain point of time, you cannot avoid getting an aid. Aid helps to give you a buffer as a country to be able to structure your way out of development. Of course, if you are staying in aid for a long time, that's another issue. And the idea is you should use the aid effectively so that you end up graduating. And that's the story of Korea. That this country received a lot of aid, but they use it as a buffer to be able to launch their development plan. And today, Korea is giving aid to Tanzania and many other countries. If it happened in Korea, it can happen to our country. Thank you.